Les gens, les boxeurs comme Steve, c'est très agressif. Ils ont ces t-shirts un peu à la Tyson, à les shorts de cours, un petit peu.
When I say you must obey, just like the both of you took them out.
Et là, Maïva, ce sont les deux. Ah, c'est un vrai coup au fort.
Eh ouais, le crochet au foie, il a touché.
Ah, c'est un vrai coup au fort.
On a envie de voir encore
Ouais,
un
pas
rouge.
vraiment coup au fort.
Allez, ça va être dur là, Gutierrez qui a arrêté.
Oui, forcément, elle remet un genou au sol.
Et alors regarde son point. Ça va dans tous les sens, la part des deux boxeuses. Et tout ça par les bons points. Et la touche à part les bons points. Elle a du mal, Viviane.
Et elle a la tête. Il va toucher.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, the WBO's 122-pound champion, Inoue Navarette, had this to say ahead of what will be his fourth defense of that WBO title. 4 title defenses already. This guy's been keeping busy. Better still, he says he'd love to face either Naoya Inoue or Luis Nery. Particular to Nery, you know, he said that Nery's his friend, and he's got his phone number. And if he wants to have a fight, all he's got to do is give him a call. And we're not there yet with the Inoue versus Navarette conversation. We're really not there because in all likelihood, Naoya Inoue's got unfinished business at 118 pounds in the bantamweight division. So before we entertain any conversations of what he can do in the super bantamweight division, that has to come first. And in all likelihood, it will. Whether it's a fight against Zolani Tete or a fight against Nordinu Bali. You know, those things have got to happen before we entertain the likes of a Inoue versus Navarette conversation. But in the case of Luis Nery, well, that would be the more pressing matter, wouldn't it? Given recent events, the fact that Luis Nery has once again blown weight ahead of what was to be the Emmanuel Rodriguez fight, which was supposed to have gone down last week, and you know, on the undercard for Wilder versus Ortiz too. We know that Luis Nery has officially outgrown the bantamweight division, and he's going to be campaigning as a super bantamweight from here on out. Manuel Navarette is saying that, hey, if that guy wants a fight, we're cool. He's got my number. All he's got to do is give me a call. But will he? Given the PBC's business practices, which we talk about all the time on this channel, the fact that the only title that Emmanuel Navarette has got is the WBO title. The WBO which the PBC so chooses to not recognize. I'll tell you that Nery versus Navarette is a titillating fight. I mean, an absolute barn burner, a potential slobber knocker of a match between two very big punchers, two very tough Mexican warriors. That's what it is. In all likelihood, that fight ends up being a crowd pleaser if it goes down. The question is, will it? Any PBC fighter at or around 118 or 122 is up the creek without a paddle. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't. But this is the way it is. And it's a self-imposed obstacle, really, because I reiterate, it doesn't have to be this way. But you got to ask yourself, would the PBC so allow Luis Nery to cross the street over there to the top-ranked side of things to challenge Emmanuel Navarette for what he's got?
Would they?
When what he's got just so happens to be something they don't recognize anyway, you know? Any fighter at 118, 122 that's with the PBC, well, they have a very unique problem. At 122, both the WBA and the IBF are in possession of the same guy, Daniel Roman. But Daniel Roman is a matchroom guy, okay? Matchroom, who the PBC ain't too fond of.
In case you forgot.
The coveted green and gold belt, that's in possession of Ray Vargas. Ray Vargas, who's a Golden Boy Promotions guy. And Emmanuel Navarette, yeah, we know he's in bed with Top Rank. He's co-promoted by both Top Rank and Zanfer Promotions. And he seems willing to give his old buddy Luis Nery a shot.
He'll do it.
Problem is, the belt he's willing to give him a shot for, well, that's a belt the PBC don't recognize. So why would they send Luis Nery to that side of the street to fight for a belt they don't recognize anyway?
They wouldn't.
You know, I touched on this fight in passing, this potential matchup, in a previous video. But the more I think about it, the less likely it seems. The less likely I think it is to actually happen. And if Luis Nery can't find the kind of dance partners at 122 that are going to get him any kind of accord, any kind of a celebrity, you know what? It's no less than he deserves. It's no less than he deserves. If you want my opinion on Luis Nery, if you want my take, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do. If you want to know what I think about this guy, I think he's a scumbag. That's what I think. I thought that ever since those fiascos with Yamanaka. All right? Is it really a coincidence that the guy tests positive for a banned substance that serves as a weight-cutting agent, only for him to blow weight in the very next fight, what was the rematch with Yamanaka? And is it a coincidence that the WBC turned the other cheek, looked the other way? Is it a coincidence that this guy's still blowing weight here today? Is that really a coincidence?
Is it?
I think if the well dries up for Luis Nery at 122 pounds, it's no less than he deserves, because he's a scumbag. And I believe Emmanuel Navarette would be willing to give him the shot. I absolutely 100% believe it. But you know what? It's not Navarette's side of things that would pose the problem. It really would be Luis Nery's side of things. He's on the PBC side. That is the side that he chose. So stand on it, okay? We all know how famous the PBC are for working with others, right? Especially Top Rank. I know. We got this Wilder-Fury fight coming up, but guess what? Wilder and Fury were already a thing before Top Rank came into the picture. So you really can't use that as an example of how the PBC plays well with others, okay?
Okay.
Wilder and Fury were already a thing before Tyson Fury so decided to cross over to that side of the street. And in all honesty, given recent events in regards to Wilder's last fight, the kind of talk that's floating around in regards to what this fight generated, rather, what it didn't generate, both at the gate and on pay-per-view. The talk of the town right now is that fight bombed. And the PBC, they need to make that money back somehow. The only way they stand any kind of a chance of making that money back anywhere in the near future is with Tyson Fury, and that's if the pay-per-view does well. Very well. So, like I said, you really can't use that as an example of how well the PBC plays with others. Wilder and Fury were already a thing before Top Rank came into it, and more importantly, at this point, they need that fight, and they need that fight to do well. Very well. So that's not an example of what we're always talking about, that if the PBC has it their way, if they have a choice, they will more often than not choose to not work with others. Back to the immediate point. If the PBC
Is freezing out Crawford.
didn't think it was important enough to the welterweight division to make Spence versus Crawford in a timely fashion, if they didn't care enough about that fight, then why the fuck would they prioritize Nery crossing over to the Top Rank side of things to fight Emmanuel Navarette? I'd love to be wrong, folks. I would love for the PBC to prove me wrong and start making those kinds of fights. But in all honesty, I'm not holding my breath. I'm not. But I'll tell you what, if I'm right, and the PBC lives up to their reputation, I'm not going to lose sleep over Luis Nery not getting the kind of opponents that would put him somewhere, because he doesn't deserve it. He doesn't deserve it. And that's my view on him. That if the well dries up, it's no less than he deserves. Now, just speaking of guys blowing weight, I'm sure you guys heard what happened earlier today at the weigh-in for what was supposed to be Oscar Valdez versus Andre Gutierrez. Gutierrez walked in there a whole 2 weight classes above the contracted limit. This is supposed to be a 130-pound fight. What's he do? He walks in there at 141.
Jesus.
A whole 11 pounds above the limit. I mean, the level of egregiousness associated with such a mishap, it's more than just unprofessional. It's downright stupefying. I mean, how could he have walked in there and thought that the fight would go on for all that? Might as well have called the whole goddamn thing off and said he can't make the weight. The nerve of the guy to walk in there. I mean, there's missing weight.
Yeah.
And then there's walking in there 2 whole weight classes above the contracted limit. It's supposed to be a super featherweight.
Super featherweight.
This guy goes right past lightweight and lands on junior welterweight.
Fuck's sake.
I mean, this isn't Oscar Valdez's junior welterweight debut. Somebody should have told Gutierrez. Now, the show must go on. Luckily for Oscar Valdez, the show will go on because they managed to find a short-notice stand-in opponent in Adam Lopez, who is so trained by Buddy McGirt, who gave the fight his blessing. Do I think that Adam Lopez is ready for this fight? Of course not. How could he be? I mean, you talk about short notice. This is about the shortest notice you can get, shorter than pulling you out of your car in the parking lot, telling you to suit up and go to the ring, you know? But I mean, all things considered, credit to Adam Lopez for standing in, but I just can't wrap my mind around Gutierrez missing it by so much, by that kind of a margin. I mean, did he even try to make the weight? You had 3 months. 3 months! I mean, look, I don't want to make too much of this. I don't want to sound over dramatic, but context is key, folks. Nery versus Rodriguez was canceled because Nery missed the weight by a pound. A pound! This guy, this Gutierrez guy, he walks in a week later, a full 11 pounds over the limit, and what do you think is gonna happen? I mean, if you're seeing that the weight isn't coming off in camp, you call Oscar Valdez's people, and you let them know, look, we can't make that weight. We're sorry, but we can't do it.
Common sense.
And what the fuck did he think was gonna happen? Well, honestly, there's not much to make of this other than just, you know, being flabbergasted that he could have missed it by that much. You know, Oscar's gonna make his debut regardless, you know, so the show goes on. But Jesus Christ, 11 pounds above the limit. And finally, to no one's surprise, Dillian Whyte has so decided to start taking a couple of jabs at Deontay Wilder, and he calls him a tall basketball player who worked at McDonald's. In the article, it talks about how Dillian Whyte doesn't view Wilder as some tough street kid, rather just an actor, a phony, a fake, that all that alter ego stuff, it's just a lot of theatrics, and that Wilder, whether Whyte is his mandatory or not, simply does not want to fight him because he sees something in him that he doesn't like. Whether it's the body punching or the tenacity, there's something about Dillian Whyte that Wilder doesn't like. Now, for the sake of conversation, let's explore what Dillian Whyte is saying and try to assess as to whether or not there's any truth in it. Is there something about Dillian Whyte
In particular,
that might leave either Deontay Wilder or Deontay Wilder's handler so inclined to circumvent that fight? I mean, why is it that he didn't take the fight when he was offered a multi-million-dollar payday to take on a guy that in all likelihood he could and would knock out?
yeah.
You know, I want to preface everything I'm about to say with this. Deontay Wilder is a devastating puncher. He is. And he's fully capable of knocking out either Dillian Whyte or Derek Chisora or Jarrell Miller. But I mention these 3 names with a purpose. I mention these 3 names for a reason, and it is that all 3 of these guys are mid-range to inside pressure guys, aggressive guys, the kind of guys that you have to stop, because if you don't, they're just going to keep coming after you.
They're those kinds of guys.
Now, over time, Dillian Whyte has improved, and he's developed a pretty good jab that we saw in the Oscar Rivas fight. But primarily, Dillian Whyte isn't known for going out there and putting on chess matches, you know. Dillian Whyte, for what it's worth, he really is an aggressive mid-range to inside guy. That's where he does his best work. That's where he slept Derek Chisora.
That's where it happened.
Lucas Brown. That's where he managed to score a knockdown over Joseph Parker. Mid-range to inside. That's Dillian's sweet spot. And it just so happens that that's not Wilder's sweet spot. We're talking nuts and bolts here, folks. We're talking fight mechanics. That Deontay Wilder is definitely a devastating puncher. He is. He's arguably the most devastating puncher in what is today's heavyweight division. There's definitely an argument there. But he's a devastating puncher when he gets full extension on his punches, okay? That's where he generates that kind of power. Not necessarily mid-range to inside, so much as from the outside coming in. It gives him the room to add the leverage, the torque, the power to really drive that punch and knock the other guy out. But like most of these tall, slinky, lanky fighters, he's got to get full extension on the punch to generate that power, whereas mid-range to inside, it can be smothered. Deontay Wilder's not known for his boxing acumen. He's not known for his inside game, per se. And at that range, he is vulnerable. I mean, that's where Eric Molina caught him with that left hook that staggered him. So one has to wonder, how does Deontay Wilder fare with a pressure fighter? Because we haven't actually seen him fight one, you know. Tyson Fury is a pure boxer. That's what he is. Hit and not get hit through and through. That's what Tyson Fury is. He's a pure boxer. Now, Luis Ortiz, he's more of a boxer-puncher. But the thing with Luis Ortiz is, while he might be a very good boxer-puncher, and he's a southpaw, there's that to consider, he's also an older gentleman. And at some point, that plays a factor. At some point, that catches up to you. Who else? Dominic Breazeale, a flat-footed, slow plotter who's there to be hit. I mean, his claim to fame is his ability to take punishment. He's there to be hit. So if you put a guy like that in there with a knockout artist, what do you think happens? A knockout happens. That's not necessarily what you get with these pressure guys that are going to come in trying to slip your jab, get around your power shots, and get close to you, stay with you, and work that midsection. You know Deontay Wilder, he's plenty tall, but he's not the beefiest guy in the heavyweight division. He's actually kind of slim for the division. So what happens when somebody goes to this guy's midsection? What happens when they go to his body? How does he react to it? How does it affect his power, round by round? His ability to fight back? You know Deontay Wilder's not a volume guy. You know he doesn't go out there throwing a whole lot of punches. So what happens if a guy ends up in front of him and tries to force him to do that? Think about it for a second, okay? On one end, you've got a guy who's really not an output guy. He's not a work rate guy. He's not a guy that goes out there throwing a whole lot of punches. This is a guy who's looking to finish the fight with a single shot. That is the shot that he is always looking for, even at the sacrifice of several rounds where he's not doing much of anything. That is what he is prone to. That is Deontay Wilder. And on the other end, you got a herky-jerky, slipping and sliding, all in your wheelhouse, mid-range to inside hooker, who's looking to throw more than just one punch. He's not looking to finish the fight with a single shot. He's just going to keep laying it on you until he gets what he wants. I'm not trying to convince you that either Dillian Whyte or Derek Chisora or Jarrell Miller are locks to beat Deontay Wilder. I'm not trying to convince you of that. I'm just saying that that particular style could give him problems because he's not accustomed to guys who don't care about his power. He's accustomed to guys that are trying to work around it, giving it respect from the opening bell. Whereas these guys, they're just going to go for broke. They're going to go for the gusto because the way they look at it, they're always one punch away from being knocked out, but that's not going to stop them from fighting their fight. It's an interesting proposition that maybe Deontay Wilder's kryptonite is a mid-range to inside guy who will go to his body, guy that'll go upstairs and downstairs. We always hear about what Wilder's got. He's got power. Yeah, he's got buckets of power, but you know what he ain't got? Fancy feet, footwork. This guy's often off balance all on his own. So what does it do to his balance when he's got another guy bull rushing him, slipping and sliding around his shots in the early stages of a fight and looking to go to his midsection? What does that do to his balance? And what does that lack of balance do to his power? As stated, I'm not trying to convince you that these guys beat Deontay Wilder so much as they could give him a problem. Because if Eric Molina was able to catch this guy with a clean left hook up top that staggered him, it's not far-fetched to say that these guys who are a cut above in Eric Molina could do a little better. Because Wilder's no finesse fighter. He ain't got the feet to play bull and matador. Just saying. It's an interesting proposition.